Hi, I'm Annie with BillBetter.net, and I want to talk to you a little bit about your billing.
You can say I've tried to make money remotely a lot of different ways. And thankfully for you, I am happy to share some of the more embarrassing failures. That was not one, actually. That one worked well. And the successes, how I've been able to do it a lot of different ways. I will share some of my personal experiences with you, how I've seen others do it and how I do it. And I've also collaborated, I'm really excited about this one, guys, with a team today that I know is going to give you the absolute best resources on this topic. Mark and Trisha Leach with HaveWindWillTravel.com. Trisha reached out to me to do an interview on her podcast talking about also the income side, but more even just how you live a life right now that you want to live rather than working for 20, 30 years and then retiring and going and traveling. How do you do that currently, like live your daydream? And so we had a great chat. She's super easy to talk to, very knowledgeable, but very fun too, and very spirited. So we really connected initially. And then Mark and Trisha started traveling the world themselves. They have an RV right now, and they're doing a 6-month all over United States, which is really cool. And they have a YouTube channel as well. So when I saw they were making videos and doing this, I asked them to do one for me early on, and I knew Trisha would be a great resource for you guys on this one, because in addition to my examples and how I do it and have seen others do it, she has talked to dozens of people on her podcast that are out there right now, adventuring, traveling, living a life they want, and somehow funding it remotely. So she's got so many examples of how it can be done. And they provide all the links for that and give you all of those resources in the video they did for me. So thank you, Mark and Trisha. Did a fantastic job. They've got for you 5 ways to make money remotely. That's today's video. So, you ready to dive in?
So are you here and your dreams are over here somewhere? I don't know what they are. Maybe you want to RV full-time, travel internationally, even sail the world, but you're thinking, how do I go from here to here when money is one of my biggest roadblocks?
We should all spend just a little time and money to sharpen our billing skills, because we all can learn to do it better.
So let's start out having a fun little laugh at Annie. That video I actually put together was for BillBetter.net, which was one of my first ideas how to make money remotely. This is not the first book I wrote, but the first technical guide. It's a legal practitioner's guide on how to better keep up with your time, how to bill more clear, effective hours as a lawyer to get your bills paid on time and actually earn all of the time and work that you do, transfer it to paper so that you actually get paid, because that's a big problem for lawyers. That's a need I saw as a lawyer for young practicing attorneys, so I put together a book on it. And I spent a very long time trying to market and sell the book myself. It was self-published. It was actually just a PDF online when it started. And I learned a lot. I made a ton of mistakes. I spent a year and a half making almost absolutely nothing on that book because I did not know what I was doing. I have a great interview if you want to know sort of that whole process and what I learned and how that turned into a company that now does make money. I did that interview with Sale Loot, Teddy J. Say hey, Teddy. And I've put the link in the video description below so you can hear that whole fun saga and maybe learn something from that. I spent about a year and a half, almost 2 years, trying to market and push that book all on my own. This was right when I left the practice in 2013. Was how to build a website for the book, BillBetter.net. You can go check it out. And I also learned how to market, which was huge, and that is my big asset now, particularly to a legal audience. So that's a skill that I learned during that process, and how to self-publish a book. So the billable hour born my company, Legal Light LLC, which is primarily how I make money now to cruise. And it falls under category number 3 of Mark and Trisha's 5 ways to do this. So I will jump in then and tell you how I did it. But for now, let's start with Mark and Trisha. Take it away, guys.
but you're thinking, how do I go from here to here when money is one of my biggest roadblocks? Well, we're going to talk about how to make that leap and get you over here today, making money remotely.
That's the topic of today's video, and we have 5 ideas to share with you to help you get started. Hi, I'm Mark Leach.
And I am Trisha Leach, host of Keep Your Daydream podcast, and together we are on the road
For 6 months, traveling the States with our 3 kids and our dog, and we think we've learned a thing or two about how to make money remotely, which is why Annie Dyke with HaveWindWillTravel has asked us to host this how-to series that she's created for her channel.
As I mentioned before, I host a podcast called Keep Your Daydream, and we have almost 100 episodes where we dive into stories just like this of people that are living everyday normal lives and decide to go after their dreams. So we're going to go into that information, pull out all the goods of how they did some of the things we're going to talk about today.
We've pulled 3 episodes of each of the 5 ideas, so if you want more information on that particular idea, then you could hear the entire episode to get even more information. Now, before we dive into these 5 ideas, let's first cover 3 myths. And the first one is passive income. Many people feel like they need more passive income before they're able to travel or realize their dreams. And the fact is, you don't need passive income to travel full time. What you might need is low maintenance income.
Yeah.
And that is where you have systems back in home to help support your remote location income.
Awesome, totally. Okay, myth 2. You don't have to be a hitchhiker or rich to live a location-independent lifestyle.
And myth 3, I don't like my job because I'm not passionate about it. Now, from personal experiences, one of the best ways that you can hate one of your passions is to turn it into a job. Okay? So one of the things that you might do is just focus on what are the things that you're good at, what are the things that make money, and what are the things that you can scale that are low maintenance so that you can actually fund your passion.
Okay, so why are we even bringing up these myths? Well, we're trying to show you that there's some roadblocks that are kind of put in our way, either by our own thinking, our family, or maybe society, saying that you have to be one thing in order to have another. So we're just saying maybe we should take these ideas and put them over to the side for a little while and think of the possibility. And that's exactly why we're talking about what we're talking about today.
Okay, now let's talk about these 5 ideas. And by the way, we're going to share them with you in order of how long it might take you to actually create location independence or remote income. And the first one is to take your current job on the road. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's no way you can take your job on the road, and that's exactly what Will with Goody Goody Gumdrop also thought. And in fact, he's an accountant, and when he went to his firm to say, I'm going to travel internationally, they said, no way. But then after he told them that he was going to do it anyway, all of a sudden possibilities opened. So there are ways, if you can plan and prepare, to kind of create some more independence. In fact, I think the statistic is 1/3 out of Americans work from home.
Yes.
So if you can kind of take that concept and then create more systems and lay the foundation, the expectation, you can take your existing job on the road.
Yeah, and Crazy Family Adventure did that as well in their episode 47. Same exact thing. First they moved into their RV, and then they were like, okay, how do we bring our work on the road? And they proposed it to the person they were working with, and they said, no, I don't think so. And they said, okay, well, we're gonna have to go in a different direction. And they say, wait a minute, wait a minute. Okay, let's think about this. So we're not suggesting that you put your boss in a hostage situation, but we are suggesting that maybe you can sit down with the person that's on your team or your boss or somebody and say, this is how I'd like to shape and mold, and really say, I'm still going to go above and beyond the Call of Duty.
That's a good point. I'm 100% committed to my job. I love what I do, and I love working with this company. But I also want to travel and spend some time over here, and is there a way that we can work together? And one of the things that we didn't cover in the beginning is that traveling full-time, and this might be surprising, traveling full-time does not cost as much as living maybe a more traditional life. So in a way, if you can re-scope the job that you do, and not necessarily take the exact job, but maybe mold a slightly different job, that would create a different outcome.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we met Adventure Possible in Yellowstone just a couple months ago. And I believe Mark worked somewhere in the software industry and is doing the same thing. He basically took a full-time job, he moved it to part-time remotely, and they've been traveling for 3 months, and they have another year planned, I believe.
Okay, number 2, and this one is so much fun. It's discovering the income in the location that you want, okay? So let's say, for instance, Nadine with Happier Than a Billionaire, she decided, I'm gonna go to Costa Rica. I'm gonna take a year off, and then I'm just gonna see what happens. Well, lo and behold, she found a need, and she's opening up a bed and breakfast. She wrote a book, and she has so many people that are flocking to her saying, wait a minute, how did you do this? What are you doing? So she found the income source from actually going to the location. Another person who did that is actually 2 guys from St. John's Brewer. They went to the Virgin Islands, and they were like, one was a NASA engineer, the other one was in software, I believe, and they decided, we're just gonna go down, we're gonna go see if there's something else for us, because this cubicle world, it's not cutting it. And lo and behold, they discovered there were no craft beers in the Virgin Islands. So they're like, why don't we do it? And so they created something from nothing, learned how to create craft beers, made them in a small kitchen. They now have a brewery that is bringing beers all over the islands. It's incredible. And the podcast was so much fun. It cracked me up. They were talking about loading beers into this tiny little truck and sliding backwards down a muddy hill. What can I learn from where I'm going and take it from there? So there's lots of examples on the podcast.
And the other story is Pizza Pie, which is if you are a cruiser or into sailing, you'll know that down in I think it's the British Virgin Islands, they have basically turned a sailboat into a pizza shop. And
it's a boat food truck.
Yeah, and it's called Pizza Pie. And so in all 3 of those examples, I think the thing I like about it the most is none of them knew what was possible until they got to that location. And so you don't need your life's savings to make a change. You may only need about 6 months, maybe a year, to get into a new location, get rid of some of the stresses that you might have from home. And then in the case of Nadine with Happier Than a Billionaire, she says after a few months, my creative energy that she says I completely forgot about just started pouring back. She says, I thought that part of me was lost forever. She says, once that creativity came back, she started writing and she wrote the books and she got all these ideas, and they essentially created a completely new life. Now, another idea that falls in the category of discovering income in the location you want is teaching English abroad. And I know that Tasha and Ryan Hacker with Chase the Story did exactly this. In fact, they overachieved, and
of course.
And they went across to go teach English, and then they ended up creating a company that taught English within like 14 different states, and then sold that company and are now sailing their catamaran around the world. But it all started with just wanting to go do something cool and teach English abroad.
Well, and prioritizing travel.
Prioritizing travel, yeah. Travel and living where they wanted was more important than other things, and so they did it. Idea number 3, freelance freedom. And this is the category that we probably most fall into.
All right, freelance freedom. I'm going to jump in here real quick because, like I said, I fall under this category. I actually fall under several categories of Mark and Trisha's 5 tips, which I think in and of itself is a good tip. You have to be creative and try a lot of different things, you know, because some are going to fail, some aren't going to work, some you're going to hate doing, even if they do work. So just try a lot of different things, and I have several going, and I'll explain to you how I started each one. Like I said, I wrote the book, The Billable Hour, and created my company, Legalite LLC, to market the book. And what I learned in doing that was marketing to a legal audience. That's kind of what Mark will talk about in turning your talent into a product. You know, what are you good at, and how can you turn that into something people can buy from you, you know, or hire you to perform that service. So legal marketing. I have 2 clients right now that I do this service for. One is a court reporter that I worked very closely with when I was practicing law, and so I write all of her social media posts, LinkedIn, Facebook. We do a constant contact newsletter, and I write those for her, targeted to reach attorneys and paralegals and, you know, get her court reporting services. I also use that skill for a expert referral service. They help lawyers find experts. So I write a weekly blog post for that client, and I can do all of this remotely. I do all of this via email, and I invoice these clients once a month at the end of the month, and they pay online. So that's all I need is the signal, Wi-Fi, and that job is done. If you have that kind of talent, find out how you can package it in a way that clients, potential customers out there can buy that from you. Definitely something to think about. Mark will tell you more about that. Freelance freedom. That's what I do.
If you're a designer or marketing, web design, and have some sort of skill along those lines, writing, PR, and the list goes on, there's other things that you can do. As I mentioned, Will being an accountant, then you can turn that skill into a remote freelance business. And one tip I would say to really make it work, particularly sailing and a little bit for RVing, is convert your business into what I would call a productized service. So if you were home, you could simply provide that service and you would go meet with your clients. But when you're away, you no longer can meet with them. So one of the things that you might consider doing is turning your service into a little bit of a product, doing the same thing for all of your clients. So they're basically subscribing to your service and you don't need to meet with them to provide your value.
Well said.
Now, let's talk about people on the podcast that are doing this.
Okay, so Paul Cortman, he has a service that he does in the technical world. Now he's also creating another service for people that have a location independent want and desire, but they have families. So he's narrowed it down to the specific person that has a family. And so he was on talking all about what he does and how he helps families achieve that goal. And there's quite a few, so you have a couple.
We've got
too.
Sailing Uma. They're both architects, and they figured out how to do that remotely, at least early on. And also Colette and Scott with Romaru. You know, Colette's a writer, and they talk about luxury travel, so they're traveling the world and writing about it and doing PR.
But they're also doing freelance writing for other outlets, so it's not just for them, they're also getting money from other venues. Or
no matter what business you're in or what skill you have, you can convert it and shape it and mold it to be what I would call a productized service.
All right, number 4, and like we said, we're progressively getting into something that might take a little more time for you to accomplish. Taking your job and just moving it to another location, that's fast. Taking your travel experience and then using it to make money, that's going to take some time. You need to go have some experiences. And so, but we've found people that have done just that because they were willing to prioritize travel and start from the beginning. So EPOP, Extra Pack of Peanuts, they started just figuring out how to go and take trips for less than you would think they should be.
With their airline miles.
Yes, so they were hacking the airline industry with different cards and things like that. So it's called EPOP for Extra Pack of Peanuts. And hilarious couple, they're totally awesome. And then
wait, hold on. Right now they're in Georgia, and I'm not talking about the state. And they've turned a business into teaching other people on how to use credit card miles for their business. But that business evolved from their travel. And so a lot of times if you can just get started, going back to our other examples, if you can just get started, you can possibly turn that travel experience into income.
All right, business from travel experience. I fall in that one too. I wear many hats because I've been trying for a long, long time to make this happen. I can't stress enough, you know, that it is hard work. I often work easily now, harder and longer hours than I did when I was an attorney some days, but I love it. I love what I do, so that's the difference. It's not really work, it's really a lot of fun. You know, it challenges me, but I still love it. So travel experiences. I went sailing, imagine that. Salt a Sailor and Keys to the Kingdom, and I don't yet have a hard copy. I gave away my last one of None Such Like It. But my books are you know, embodiments of my travel experiences. Salt of a Sailor was my first passage when we got our Niagara 35 and brought her home for the first time. Many of you have read that. If you like it, thumbs up. And Keys to the Kingdom was the story of my leaving the practice. And when we sailed to the Florida Keys in 2014, I sort of evolved that whole process over the sailing trip. So that was books that I wrote as a result of my travel experiences. And like I said, I learned from writing my first book how to self-publish online through Amazon. I do hard copy books and Kindle books. And I'm happy to help any of you out there who think, you know, writing books and self-publishing, if that's something you want to do, please email me. I'm happy to share all of the mistakes that I learned, because I did spend a lot of time doing things the wrong way. And I'm happy to share that knowledge with you. And I make a little bit of money, not much from the books, just honestly, it's probably maybe 10% of my overall income, very small. But it keeps growing. You know, it doesn't cost me any money once the book is out there. I just have to market it, and that's part of my whole program. So it's just extra money coming in. It is truly kind of that passive income that Mark says is helpful, but you really don't need it. But that's one for me, is the books. So that was something that I did as a result of making business from my travel experiences.
Totally. And then we have Kristen from the Barefoot Theory, and totally hilarious. She was talking about how she left her job and she started writing, and then she's like sweating bullets. She moved in with her parents and she's like, is this even going to come together? This is not what I was envisioning. But it did, because she just kept at it. And now she's not living with her parents anymore. She's traveling the globe and she's writing all about it. It's one of the best websites that I've been to if you want to go on an outdoor hiking adventure for just the average person, not the person who wants to go like scale Everest, right? So phenomenal, but she had to have the experience in order to write about the experience.
And then lastly, Sailing Totem. The Totem crew has done a couple things. First, they've written a book called Voyaging with Kids, and secondly, they've just now started coaching for sailors. And they're gonna be on the podcast this month, and we're gonna potentially hook up with them in New York a little bit later. But that's such a great way where they can take all that experience. I think they've been sailing full-time for 8 years, where they can take that experience now and turn it into a product. And I can tell from that little LCD screen that we have to do a light check, because Trisha's turning into Patrick Swayze from the movie Ghost. Okay, here we are in our new improved lighting situation as the sun continues to go down.
Yes.
Okay, what number are we on?
We are on 5,
Number
content
5.
creation.
Content creation. So speaking of content creators, how about SV Delos? They're episode 3 of Keep Your Daydream, and they have really created some incredible YouTube content.
Yeah.
But more importantly, they've been able to convert that audience on YouTube into their Patreon account, which are people that basically pay $1 or $2 or $5 or $10 or $50 per each of their episodes. And there are some people that have really leveraged Patreon to essentially fund their full-time travel. Now, again, like Trisha's saying, as we get closer to the end of these things, they take longer to do. That audience needs to be there before you're able to do that. And you need to be providing tremendous content.
Right. And the other part of that is thinking, how much does it really cost to be out on a sailboat? Because, you know, we all have a different level of where we like to live and what we like to spend, but you'll find immediately that if you're doing a full-time lifestyle, it's probably less than you would spend in suburbia, say, or in an urban city, but you do have to figure that out. So, but if you go and look at SV Delos and what they're creating from their Patreon account, you'd be so impressed. But again, it took time.
Yeah, it did.
Another great story is Mallory Page from Operation Moto Dog. Awesome, awesome story. She talks about finding your can-do community. But anyway, you'll have to go to the podcast to hear the whole thing. But she had never driven a motorcycle before she decided to go around all of the United States and Alaska in a motorcycle that she created a sidecar for her 11-year-old dog. The dog has like goggles and the whole thing. So anyway, but she's created a whole community where she feeds into them, she writes for them, she's a beautiful writer, and she also has a Patreon account where people are supporting her because she's giving something to them and they're giving something back to her.
That's right. And then also Kristen G Travels was on the podcast. Now they have a massive following and a big audience of basically their RV travel.
And they provide, again, great content for people who want to be full-timers.
They provide value, and now that is, I suspect, now turning into other ideas that they're able to do. So the idea here is none of these people and none of these stories knew what they were necessarily getting into, but they just took the leap and they created it, and then from that they built a community and then turned the community into
what it is, and I think it goes back to that huge principle where you're adding value, because when you start adding value and you're pouring in, not necessarily to see what you can get back, it's just amazing what ends up happening, the community that forms, and then the people that reach out to you to say, hey, I want your support on what I'm doing, and I'll support you, and vice versa, and affiliates, and all kinds of stuff can grow and blossom out of that. But it's really adding that value, because it is a lot of work to create content, and it takes a long time.
It's a lot of work, and you really do have to love doing it, because the rewards will not come fast enough to sustain the amount of work that you have to put into it. So if you really enjoy doing it and you like writing, or you like vlogging, or you like blogging, or whatever it is that you enjoy doing, it is fun. I personally have found that vlogging our trip has helped us kind of really be in the moment. I mean, looking at everything we're doing through the perspective of our audience has just amplified the whole experience.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
All right, last time I'm jumping in because I'm under this category too. Switch my hats. With a content creator. That's the whole HaveWindWillTravel Lollapalooza. I've been writing on the blog for about 3 years. I started it right before we got our boat in February of 2013. It wasn't until about maybe a year ago, it hasn't been that long, that I decided to turn HaveWindWillTravel.com into a potential business. And at the outset, I will say I 100% agree with Mark. If something is your passion, think very long and hard before turning that into a business, because that is almost the first way to ruin it as your passion. I try very hard not to do that, because it does take a lot of time and hours to put out the kind of content at Have Wind Will Travel that is worthy, I think, of earning an income. And there are some days that I do curse it, but they're very few and far between. And when I have, often on those days, people write to me and tell me how much I've affected them and inspired them. Makes it totally worth it. So it is still my passion, and I will do it regardless of whether it makes money. But it's nice that it does, and that I can earn a living doing something I absolutely love. Everything I do at Have Wind Will Travel, which probably takes me some weeks, 30 hours that week to put together everything, it dwarfs the time that I spend with my legal marketing clients and makes less money. The whole thing. So just know how much time input that takes. Make sure that's what you want to do, and that's how you want to use that passion, is to try to make money with it. But I love it. I do one video a week, one blog post a week. I give away free books. I'm making the movie. All of those things, that finally now I feel are worthy of earning contributions or donations or purchases of my sort of cruising products. So I'm a content creator as well, and hoping eventually it would be cool if that turns into my only profession. But I like the legal marketing stuff too. I'm totally fine with that. And I spend I would need to spend about 5 to 6 hours a day currently doing all of my work, which is fine with me. I wake up early, I get it done, and my work day is done usually by 1 or 2, and I can go play or do boat projects, and that's a perfect life for me. I'm going to have to modify when I'm traveling more and have less Wi-Fi, because right now I have a pumping signal at home. But I'll do that, and I was able to do that with the Atlantic crossing by stockpiling work ahead of time. My clients were very understanding, and I turned everything in, a whole month's worth of work, a month early, and it was a ton of work and hard to do, but it worked well, and I was able to do it. So if I'm going to lose Wi-Fi for couple weeks, I know I can handle that by doing the work ahead of time, or on my video schedule, making the videos ahead of time and having a friend publish, or just making my followers wait. They're going to have to get used to me traveling, and it's just not always going to be this perfect schedule. But it's all flexible, and I could go tomorrow, and like I said, we make enough that I can go. It's not all passive income. I have to work to keep putting this stuff out, and it's an awesome thing to do. But content creators, just want to say, do be careful to make sure that passion remains your passion.
Okay, so we've given you 5 ways to make money remotely, but we didn't want to stop there. We wanted to give you one extra, just a bonus, and this might speak to the person who wants to start dabbling and figuring it out. So,
well, we decided to throw in part-time travel, and that's because we have found that part-time travel could be the perfect idea for so many people. And we've had a lot of people on the podcast say, hey, look, I love to travel, but I also like my home. And for those of you that resonate with that, we have a few episodes to look into.
Oh my gosh, we have Annie from the Part-Time Traveler. She's a writer, and so she writes for other magazines, she writes for herself, but really she just says, I want to be out for about 3 months. She said, that's about my max, and then she said, I want to go back to my home in San Francisco. But she said that mix is what keeps her creative, and I'm sure anybody who's watching today that's a creative type of personality, you know that you need to kind of get saturated in something new in order to come up with new ideas. So that's one.
Another idea is Terwin, which was recently on the podcast, and he's a doctor. He's an emergency room surgeon, and you wouldn't think that would be the type of business or the type of profession that you could do part-time or even travel remotely. But for the past, I think, 8 years, they have been circumnavigating the world in their sailboat. And so how he's part-time. So how he's done it is he's taken 6 months off of his job so that he can go sail, and then he comes back into the hospital and he does surgery the other 6 months. He says it's the absolutely perfect idea for him because, or the perfect...
Yeah, he said he had to find the perfect hospital to work in. You kind of understand that you have to figure out how you're going to do it. It's noodling it around and figuring out how you're going to be able to make it happen. But he said, I could work full-time and go on 2 weeks vacation and make more money. He said, but then I would be losing out on this whole side of my life that's given me so much more. So that's how they just weighed, you know, both sides.
Yep. And then lastly in the part-time category would be RV Family Travel Atlas.
Woohoo! Yeah, they have done a great job. They
Mm-hmm.
were teachers, both of them, and then they started getting into RVing. They were doing all kinds of writing about it. They got a book deal for, what is that, the Idiot's Guide
Idiot's Guide to RVing.
Yeah, so, and then they're kind of like the spokespeople for RVs whenever there's a show and things like that. So one of the teachers, Stephanie, I believe, one of the teachers quit their job so that they could work full-time in the industry, creating other podcasts for other people, their podcasts, and just doing so many things, but doing it part-time because they had a family and they weren't willing to leave what they called home. So those are our 5 ideas, plus a bonus for any of you part-time travelers out there. But they're just a springboard so that you can get your mind going, push away those myths for just half a second, and think about what the possibilities could be if you decided that this was right for you.
And then of course we want to hear from you in the comments of this video. What types of professions do you have? What questions do you have? You can always email hello@keepyourdaydream.com. We want to hear from you. If you have an idea and you're thinking, I do this and I don't know how it can be a location independent business or how I could do this remotely, you know, shoot it our way, see if we can help you. We're more than happy to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then of course if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
And of course, if you'd like to follow our adventure around the States for the next 6 months, we release every week in a new city or a new spot.
Yes.
So right now we're in New York and we still have so much to go. We're going to the Northern Carolina, well, New York, Washington, D.C., North and South Carolina, possibly Kitty Hawk, down to Savannah, Charleston, Key West, New Orleans, Texas, all the way back to Arizona. So join us for that trip. We'd love to have you come along.
Like start today with something small that's geared toward that goal, and make sure every day you do something geared toward that goal, because it is possible if you do it. If you start taking those steps, if you sit back and plan and think you have to have X number of dollars and a boat or you can't ever go, you're never going to go.
You're listening to Keep Your Daydream Podcast, episode 75. Have Wind, Will Travel with Annie Dyke.
Want more of this really cool content? Great! Go to HaveWindWillTravel.com, where you can follow on the blog or get free e-copies of my sailing books, and consider becoming a patron for access to my exclusive Atlantic crossing footage and help us help one of you get out on the water too. Get inspired and get on board.